Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. By Tandem Diabetes Care, makers of the T-Slim X2 insulin pump. And by Real Good Foods, real food you feel good about eating.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, Ask the D-Mom is back. Moira McCarthy and I answer your questions about explaining diabetes to others without creating fear. We weigh in on offering incentives for, quote, good numbers, and give concrete tips about handling burnout.
Well, tell me what you can handle doing in a day. What can you handle? And they came to an agreement that she could handle getting up in the morning and checking her blood sugar and correcting if she needed it, and checking her blood sugar before she put her head down to go to sleep at night and correcting if she needed it. And she was like, that's all? And he's like, well, it's more than you've been doing.
Moira explains how that advice to do less actually helped her daughter do much more and take back her diabetes management. We also talk about caregiver burnout. Plus, our community connection with a campaign to treat somebody to a great meal while helping JDRF. And in our Tell Me Something Good, a roundup of milestones and a second American Ninja Warrior contestant with T1D this year. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of Diabetes Connections. I'm your host, Stacey Sims, and I am thrilled to be back on a more regular schedule. We didn't miss a beat. I know if you're a regular listener, you had all the shows, but my schedule had been a little crazy, and so I'm kind of back in the saddle, at least for now. You know how these things go, but we did a lot of traveling. I had posted some stuff on social media and shared it in the Facebook group. I hope you're part of the Facebook group. If not, it's Diabetes Connections, the group. We went out to San Francisco. We live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. So we flew to San Francisco for the kids' spring break, and then we made our way north, ending up in Seattle for the Friends for Life Diabetes Conference. This is a family conference. They have the largest family diabetes conference in the world in the summer, and they do these regional conferences during the year. We are on a quest as a family to try to hit all 50 states. So California, Oregon, Washington, we banged those off the list. And I have always, since I was a little girl, wanted to see the Redwood Forest. And oh my gosh, it's impossible to put into words. It was wonderful. It did not disappoint. I'm going to talk at the end of the show a little bit more about Benny and diabetes on the trip and how that all worked out and some travel stuff. But we've got a lot to get to. So I'll talk about that later after our conversation with Moira and our regular segments here. I do have to mention, before we go on with the show, though, that 2 weeks ago now, I did one of our Diabetes Connections extra episodes on ketones. These are new episodes I'm doing this year where we do a deep dive into one aspect of diabetes management. And the episode on ketones got some, I'm going to call it interesting reaction, passionate reaction. Not so much from the diabetes community, although there was a small and vocal part of it, but about people who follow the ketogenic diet. And I'll just spend a moment talking about that if I could. This episode was about educating people with type 1 diabetes about ketones, ketoacidosis, staying out of DKA, how to test for ketones, all of those things that go by very quickly at your doctor's appointments that we may not talk about with our educators that are extremely important to know. This was not an episode that would make or break your decision to follow a certain type of eating. And the CDE I spoke to was very much against the keto diet. And that got a lot of people angry. You know, food is a difficult subject. And whenever I've done shows where I talk to someone who espouses a very low carb type of eating or a very high carb type of eating or just an everything in moderation type of eating, I hear from people who disagree. And that's okay. These are not easy decisions to make with or without diabetes. And I'm not here to tell you how to eat. That's not what this show is all about. There are plenty of shows that will tell you exactly how to eat, how to move, how to live with or without diabetes. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to give you good information, let you bring that to your healthcare provider, let you look at it on your own, make your decisions. And if you want to yell at me because you didn't like something a guest said, that is fine with me. I can take it. I was in political talk radio for 10 years. Yes, I did news. I didn't really do a lot of opinions, but when you swim in those waters, you get used to a lot of criticism, regardless of what you say. There's always somebody who wants to try to take you down. So I guess that's just a way of saying that I stand by the episode. I'm glad we did it. I think the information was excellent. In terms of how to eat, if you disagree with that CDE and you found one who helps you, or you've got a healthcare provider that thinks you're doing great, as my grandmother would say, nach besser, go ahead, go and live well, be happy, and stop writing me nasty emails. And let's move on here. I gave enough time to that. Thank you very much so the vast majority of you who were not sending me nasty emails or social media messages. One funny thing I have to point out before we get to the conversation with Moira is I think we hit a milestone this month. You will hear, it's later in the interview, but it's obvious. You will hear me talk to Moira, basically giving advice that she gave me years ago. And I completely forgot that it was her who gave me the advice. So, oh my gosh, so funny and embarrassing. But hey, I had to point it out because it absolutely cracked me up. And yeah, that's what happens when somebody gives you really good advice and it works, right? You want to give it to as many other people as you can. Oh my gosh. So you will hear that in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. And for 7 years, One Touch Vario test strips have delivered reliable results you can trust. And did you know they have the lowest copay on the most health plans and are always covered on traditional Medicare Part B? To upgrade today to the One Touch Vario Flex Meter, visit diabetes-connections.com and click on the One Touch logo. Coverage and payment may be subject to co-insurance, deductible, and patient eligibility requirements. LifeScan does not guarantee coverage or payment. Hey, Moira, we're just going to jump right in this week. How are you doing?
I am doing great. And as always, it's so good to hang out with you and talk about all the things we care about.
I know. I love it so much. So, of course, this is Dear D-Mom. We've got a monthly segment now. We've got more questions than we can handle. They're coming in through email and the Facebook group, and we really appreciate it. And we have some really good ones to get to this week. But, of course, I just want to check in with you. How are you doing? How are the babies? Maura, if you don't know, recently became a grandma for the second time.
They are the cutest things ever, and I'm having so much fun, and this may very well be the best time of my life, and we are counting down the days because my daughter Lauren, the one with diabetes, is coming home to visit in a week, and she has not seen her new niece yet. So, yay!
Oh, so exciting!
I know. Side note, she was supposed to come home this weekend, and she called me yesterday and said, Mom, I'm really sorry, but I have to put off my visit for a week. I didn't realize it's the same week as my endocrinologist appointment. And I almost fainted. I'm like, why are you being so grown up and responsible about your diabetes? I'm shocked. Yay. We even worry when they're 27.
Gosh, yeah, it never stops. Never stops. All right, so we have some great questions this week, but before we jump in, I have to share a story. Maura, this happened just recently. Benny was telling me this story, and I'm not going to share any names because this is a local family in my area, but he was telling me about a kid that the parents had promised the child a prize of some kind. It was a video game or something if he could get his A1C down. And Benny said, yeah, well, you know how this is going to end. So Benny said that he was in the nurse's office all the time at school because he was going low on purpose. And it was just so, to me it was sad. And I said, well, what do you mean by low? And he was like, no, really low, like 30s and 40s, and he had to get out of class and he wasn't feeling well. And I just wanted to bring that up because, man, I get the intentions of the family, right? You want to motivate your kid to take care of themselves. But when you're rewarding for an actual number, is that the issue here? What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah. And like you said, with the best intentions, right? Yeah. I think I've said to you before, but I'm just going to remind you, if I had our diabetes life to do over again, Lauren would not even know what an A1C was. I mean, think about it. When your kids without diabetes go for a checkup, you get labs and you don't say to your kids 2 weeks later, oh my gosh, your cholesterol was so good. I'm going to go online and post it for all my friends. And I get why we care so much about an A1C, but I think this is a good example of that kids may not have the bandwidth to really understand it all, and they may not need to. That's our job, right? Now, I will tell you, when Lauren was little and there was only MPH and regular, and you could really only have something to eat outside of certain periods when you were low, I remember one day she and her cousin, we were at their house and they had 2 staircases and they were lapping the staircases, running. She was like 6. And we said, "What are you doing?" And her cousin said, "We're going to run until Lauren's low enough to have a cookie." Oh, but that was a different time. We're not in that time now. So,
right.
You know, I guess if I was going to say something to that mom, I would probably say, an A1C is not the most important thing about your child, and I probably wouldn't want to reward them for that. If you do want to reward them for something, maybe just an overall, if they have a month where most of the time they're cooperative about their care.
Yeah, I'm a big, I call them incentives, not bribes, but I have been an incentivizer for diabetes since day one. You know, when Benny was first diagnosed and he was teeny tiny, he was 23 months old. So it was, you know, hey, if you poke your finger 3 times, you get a sticker, you know, and if you get this many stickers, you get a Matchbox car. But it was always about, you get the reward for doing the actual checking, for doing the management, although we're not going to explain it to a little kid like that. You never get the reward for the number.
You know what I just remembered? I don't think I've ever told you this. So in my first diabetes book, The Everything Parent's Guide to Juvenile Diabetes, yes, that title makes me sick too, but my publisher insisted on it. I have in there something that we did when Lauren was little, and that is we played diabetes bingo. And we had a bingo card on the refrigerator, and there were all different kinds of numbers, not just in range numbers, any kind of number. And every time we checked, she would look on her diabetes bingo card. And anytime she got a bingo, she got a prize. It wasn't like she got a pony or a trip around the world or anything, but, you know, maybe take her to the park or go out to breakfast or something like that. But the message behind the game was every number is a quote unquote good number.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Just
and it kind of rewarded her. Oh, that was fun. I'm glad you made me remember that. It was fun.
That is cool. And it's not as though, I know some, as you're listening, you may be thinking, well, there are good numbers and we need to be healthy and that's ridiculous. Your kids know this. If, you know, once you're in diabetes land, it doesn't take long for them to understand and to hear it and to get it, that they feel better at certain numbers, right? You want to be healthy. We're not encouraging you to aim for different numbers, but I'm telling you, if you are only rewarding certain numbers, your children are going to go out of their way, and they are very smart, and they will do these things to figure out how to please you.
Yeah, as that child showed. But I'm also going to say, here's why every number is a good number. Because what a number is information. That's all it is. And it wasn't so long ago. It was only like 3 years before my daughter was diagnosed that meters and strips started being covered by insurance. So it was not that long ago that people didn't have numbers to go on. And that's why every number is a good number, because all it is information to figure things out. So I will stand on that hill forever saying every number is a good number. And there are people every once in a while who see that bingo game and say, how can you put 350 on a bingo game and have them cross it off and be happy? Because now you know they're 350. That's why. But
no,
crazy.
No. That's a great point. I will say before we move on to a question here, and this may not be popular. This is why I hate the 100 Club on social media. And if you're not familiar with this, lucky you, but this is where people will take a picture of their kid holding the meter at 100 and saying, you know, woohoo, we hit 100. Now I get it. It's fun. You know, it's a round number. And I guess some people pick other numbers that are fun to them. But once again, when you're only rewarding a particular number, and a picture and smiling and putting it on social media is a reward, the message to the kid is that's the good number. The other numbers are bad. So I don't know about you. I know you don't like it.
We had a joke around a number, and that was TV commercial number. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but everyone who checks their blood sugar on a television commercial is 104.
I was just going to say 104.
Yeah, they're always 104. So when she'd be 104, we'd be like, TV commercial number. But we would just laugh about it because it's obscene that everyone on every commercial is 104. But I agree with you completely. I think that the less focus you can have on those numbers, other than learning how to take action from them, the better, you know, because we all judge ourselves about everything, right? And setting those kind of things from a young age, you know, yay, we'll take a picture and share it with everyone if you're 100, or if your A1C is low, we'll give you a prize, is sort of encouraging our children to judge themselves. And there's too much judgment in diabetes already. It has to just be sort of a mellow working with, living with it, rather than, yay, I win today.
Okay, so let's move on to one of our questions for this week. And this comes from Krista. And she says, how do I educate people who say diabetes isn't serious? And I don't hear of many deaths from lows or highs. So is it possible you're overreacting without losing my mind? She asks. You know, is there a better way to educate people about the seriousness of diabetes? Krista says. Right back to our conversation in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And, you know, it's really hard to think of something that has changed our diabetes management as much as the Dexcom Share and Follow apps. The amazing thing to me is how it helps us talk less about diabetes, if that makes sense. You know, as a caregiver, a parent, spouse, you know, whatever your relationship, you can help the person with diabetes manage in the way that works for your individual situation. You know, Benny and I really talk it out. How are we going to use this? When am I going to text you? When am I going to leave you alone? And then you don't have to ask about diabetes. Did you check? Did you check? Which I used to walk around saying all the time because you can see it. Internet connectivity is required to access Dexcom Follow. Separate Follow app required. Learn more at diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Now back to Krista's question about explaining diabetes. She said she's worried people won't take it seriously enough, and she mentions deaths from lows and highs. I have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, it's such a fine line, and I think we have to sort of break this question down because I kind of disagree with her in the middle, but I get what she's trying to say, and I have some thoughts. Thankfully, the reality today is living with diabetes is still very difficult, but it's so much better than it was even just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and certainly 35 years ago. And I would say that I don't consider my child to be in a life and death situation every day. Yeah. And thankfully, there are not a lot of deaths of young people from diabetes. It may feel like a lot because we share on social media. And of course, one is too many. But I think that I always wanted my child to grow up feeling confident that she was safe. Right. And so we're huge fundraisers for JDRF, for Diabetes Camp, for Insulin for Life, as you know. And so I've always had to try to kind of walk that line. How do I explain why my friends should open their wallets for this and at the same time express in public confidence that my daughter is safe and can live a healthy life? Because can you have both? And I would argue you can have both, because the way that my daughter lives her healthy, long life, in which I'm not afraid she's going to die any moment, is that she has to do a whole bunch of stuff all the time and spend a whole bunch of money and have a whole bunch of doctor's appointments. So I would say that the way to explain it to people, if you don't know them well, I would just blow it off because it's whatever. But if you know them enough, I would say, give me 20 minutes. Let's have a cup of coffee and I'm just going to take you through a day in my child's life. Yeah. And just take them through the day. Here's what they do when they wake up. Here's what they do when they eat. Here's how many times they feel low. Here's how many times they feel high, etc. And that can often shine a light on it for people. What do you think?
I think that's a great point. I've wrestled with this a lot when Benny was first diagnosed, especially as a very young child, because I wanted people to know how serious it was, but I also wanted him to be welcome at play dates and at preschool, right?
Bingo.
So, yeah, yep. So it's a very difficult thing. But what helped me a lot was several years ago, I heard Carrie Sparling speak, and she, of course, writes the 6 Until Me blog. And she was talking about how it's okay to talk about diabetes in different ways to different people. And you touched on that when you said, if you don't know the person, you can be like, hey, type 1 diabetes is more complicated than you think and walk away. If it's a friend, you might want to do it this way. But Carrie took us through when she has a low blood sugar, what she says to her mom, which is, hey, I was low last night. I treated it. I'm fine. What she says to her friends with type 1, I felt like crap. I had just brushed my teeth. I didn't want to eat glucose tabs, so I tried to ride it out. And then, of course, I went too low, and then I had to have my husband help me. It was a pain in the ass. I didn't get any sleep, and I'm grumpy today. And then what she says to her insurance company. You better pay for that CGM or I could have passed out overnight and it would have been the end of the world. And blah, 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 and these are different ways to talk to people. They're all valid, but you might want to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I speaking this way? Is it to justify? Do I feel like I need to justify myself to this person about how I'm raising my child? Do I want to explain to them so that he can have a great play date and they can really understand? To me, education is always great. But if it's coming from a place of, I have to prove myself to you, it's not as important. So yeah. I would ask, why is this important to you? And again, I don't hear of many deaths from lows and highs. She's looking for accredited studies to educate people. I don't know that there are any studies showing that children are dropping dead from type 1 diabetes every day. Now, I know that's a flippant thing to say. And as you said, one is too many. We're not trying to make light of anything. It is serious. It is terrible. It can be scary. But the truth of the matter is that I don't go through these last 12 years going to bed and waking up thinking that Benny's life is in imminent danger. I really don't. And I don't know that I would advocate that type of education. It's such a, you walked it too. It's such a fine line of we get it and it's scary. And of course, anything is possible. But you get into a car and you drive 6 blocks. It's so much more dangerous than one night of type 1.
Absolutely. And I wonder if this mom should share her concerns about death with her endocrinology team and ask them to talk to her about it, because even if we think we're only talking about it with other adults, our kids that stuff just sits in the air and it marinates into their soul. Yeah. And we have to be really careful. I have seen people as adults who are cautionary tales, whose parents were so terrified that they're 45 years old and they still live at home with their mother and they need their mother to check their blood sugar every night. Now, there are cases of people who have other things that impede it, but I'm talking about quote unquote just diabetes, as if just is a word you could use with it, sure. But you know what I'm saying. And we need to not build a fear in our children. I say it all the time. If we could vanquish fear and cure fear, which I think we can, we would go a long way. So I think if there are parents who feel like, you don't understand, my child could die any minute, they may want to do a little check on their own education and their own feelings and their own fears and see if they can learn from it too. Now, that does not mean that diabetes is not a really, really, really devastating and difficult thing that needs to be cured in any way whatsoever. I can tell you to this day, my daughter is thriving, as you know, but it is a weight on her every day. It is a challenge. It is difficult. She works really hard to have it not impede her life. And it's expensive to the world too. So I guess that's what I would say.
I agree. And again, to reiterate, anybody who says diabetes isn't serious, I will fight you. I mean, I'm kidding, but
I would do that roundhouse kick thing that they do on Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, that's
annoying. And all the silly things that people will say.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say too, as we talked about a couple months ago, I went through a very, very, very scary medical emergency in January. I coded on a hospital table. I am still recovering. I'm going to have another surgery, but eventually it will be gone and I will be fine. So even though I've been through a terrible thing, it's nothing compared to what a person with type 1 diabetes looks at every single day, right?
Great point. No, absolutely. It is serious. And there are certainly moments, as I said in the last 12 years where I haven't worried about life or death, but I have worried about long term. I've worried about, are we going to the hospital? I've worried about, all the issues that go through your mind. So please, listen to what we're saying and don't misunderstand. Maura will roundhouse kick you and I will video that if you think diabetes isn't serious. I'm not going to get that visual out of my head.
It's a really funny balance to have to strike.
Yes.
But we must strike it for the sake of our children's overall health and success in life, right?
Oh, absolutely. I want Benny to have the confidence and also the responsibility, right? You need to be fearless and confident, but also, I don't know if this is even possible, Moira. So fearless and confident and cautious and responsible, right? All things with type 1 diabetes.
We can dream.
But that's what you need with type 1. And I know people who have that, right? On one hand, they have that. I'm going to, you laugh, but we're coming from a parent's point of view. I'm going to a diabetes conference and I will be alone in a hotel room. Right? This is an adult with type 1 and they do it. They travel the world. They do what they want to do. But at the same time, they must pack all their supplies. They must take responsibility. They must speak up for themselves. And they must have a little voice in the back of the head that says, what if, and I better be prepared. So I look at adults with type 1 who do that. And I am just, I don't know what the right emotion is. I'm inspired and I'm hopeful and my heart hurts for them all at the same time. Oh.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay, so let's talk about a lot. We got a couple of questions this week about burnout. Jessica and Tamara, I'm combining your questions into one, although they are different. But Jessica's asking about a teen who is very introverted, diagnosed as a baby, but has other issues. And she feels like her daughter is very introverted and is burned out. And Tamara, who wrote in about her burnout because she has a teenager with type 1 and she is busy and she is trying to do her own thing, but he needs to be reminded all the time. And she feels guilty when she forgets to remind him and checks up on him. So let's just talk about burnout overall because this is a real thing.
Really? Is it? We've never experienced it. I crack myself up. I talk a lot in my teen book about burnout. And one of the things that was unfortunate for us that I would like parents or even loved ones of adults with type 1 to think about is everybody hits burnout at some point over this. It's too much. But the ideal situation is that you and the person who you love and care for do not hit burnout at the same time. Because that's what happened to my daughter and me. I was feeling like our second questionnaire, I'm sorry, I don't remember her first name, who's just trying to do her job and trying to live her life and take care of her family and has to take care of this child too and is just feeling like she's failing and feeling exhausted and sick of it. Well, at the same time, my daughter was feeling like she just didn't want to deal with it anymore. It would have been nice if I was not burnt out when she was, or if she was not burnt out when I was, but it doesn't always happen that way. So from this, I think the first thing I want to say is it's the old airplane story. You have got to put your air mask thing on first. You have got to put yourself first in order to take care of your child. And I don't think we do that. I think we give up everything for the sake of taking care of our child. Now, parenting overall is like that, right, Stacey? We do that with our other children too. But I would say to this mom, the first thing is, if your teen child needs you to do this, you need to do it. I think that it is incredibly mature and inspiring that a teen child would say, I can't handle this. Please do it for me. Right? And so what I would say to her is, within that busy, frantic life that I totally understand, carve out time, whether it's you like to go to walk on the beach or you like to go to a book group or you like to go to yoga, whatever it is, make that time and dedicate it to yourself every week just so you at least have a couple hours where you can just breathe and get away from it all. It's easier to fix your burnout than it is to fix your child's burnout. That doesn't mean it's easy.
Listening to you, Moira, and again, as you're listening at home, my son who has type 1 is 14. I do have an older daughter without diabetes who's 17, but my teen is still on the young side of teens, and I haven't been through everything that Moira has been through. So as I listen to you talk, Moira, that really hit home. It hit me hard. Really? Because I don't know that I have my...
You're like my really together friend. Stop it. I'm only kidding.
I don't know that I have my oxygen mask on that well right now.
Yeah, well, none of us do really. And it's not because we're not smart. It's because we care. And what we don't realize is we feel selfish doing for ourselves, but actually it's not selfish because we've got to make ourselves stronger every way so that we can get through these years of parenting. And it does pass. I will tell the parents that too. I don't know a lot about my daughter's diabetes anymore. We actually just had a discussion about this the other day, she and I, which maybe at another week I can share with you because it's quite fascinating to me now that I'm, she's almost 28. She's truly an adult, but I don't really know everything anymore. And so I have my time now and she still has it. So that's why for as many years as you can support them and help them learn how to deal with their burnout, you should, because they are going to be out on their own and they're going to have to figure it out on their own. So it's only a period of time. And I remember, oh my God, I think I'm on my older daughter now with the new baby too. She has 2 babies, basically. She had 2 babies in 2 years. She is going to be tired for about 20 years now, right?
Yep.
But already I've said to her, let me come over. I'll take care of the baby and just go out for a ride in the car. You've got to give yourself your own peace of mind and your own time and your own happiness so that you don't fall apart when your child needs you when they fall apart.
I'm going to give what may be medical advice, so feel free to check me here. And Tamara and Jessica, as you listen, I'm going to tell you right now, you need to check with your endo before you take this advice or, make sure you check with a medical professional because I am not one. But I do think that when you're in the teen years or any time that there is serious burnout going on and the person is beating themselves up for not doing everything they're, quote, supposed to do, that it may be time to ask, what is the least that I can safely do?
Yes.
And I know you've written about this too, but I will tell you that one thing, and I've seen other people do this, that if you can back up to, and again, it's different for everyone and you have to talk to your endo. For a teenager who pumps, maybe it's adding 1 shot of long-acting insulin and then bringing down the basal. You have to work with your endo to get these things right. If they forget to bolus for a meal or something goes wrong with the pump or they keep that site in for 4 or 5 days, you have long acting on board and you can take the time once a day to watch that shot go in. Maybe it's checking twice a day. I know that may sound horrifying to a lot of people, but it may help for a while just to do the minimum that keeps you safe so that you don't have further burnout and you get back to a place where you will do more. And, to me, that just makes sense. Is it okay to say those kinds of things, Moira?
So this is how Lauren finally crawled her way out of her multi-year burnout is she went to this amazing new adult endocrinologist. Her idea, not mine. I was like, no. She was right. She said, I'm sick of the clowns in the waiting room. But what she meant is I need to be spoken to as an adult. But what he did is he said to her, well, tell me what you can handle doing in a day. What can you handle? And they came to an agreement that she could handle getting up in the morning and checking her blood sugar and correcting if she needed it, and checking her blood sugar before she put her head down to go to sleep at night and correcting if she needed it. And she was like, that's all? And he's like, well, it's more than you've been doing. So it's a baby step. And I'm going to tell you in 6 months' time, her A1C dropped a huge amount.
Yeah.
So clearly that didn't just drop her A1C. She clearly opened her mind to doing a little more. It's hard for me to know because she was away at college at the time, but it was amazing to me. I was an over the top, super crazy, must have low A1C, must be perfect mom when she was little. So that was like, what? But it worked. But here's what's important about that conversation is if it isn't just the child saying that they want to do this, it's them dealing with their medical team and having the medical team say, this is fine. And you've got to have 2 things. 1, a trust in that medical team. And 2, the willingness to let go of it a little and let your teen child and their medical team make those decisions together, because that will empower your child too. I also want to say that I really worry about burnout with the new technology. I love technology. Don't get me wrong. I think everyone should use it if they want to use it. But I see more and more parents really driving to this point where they want their children to be between like 90 and 120 all the time. That's really hard to do. It's really hard. People do it. When you're pregnant, you have to do it. And by the way, and Carrie Sparling has spoken about this, the most common time to go in a really deep burnout is after pregnancy because of the intensity of your care. Yeah. And so if those numbers on those graphs that we see all the time are pushing parents to this level, which may have happened with me 22 years ago when Lauren was diagnosed, if they had that tool, are pushing them to this level of you've got to be between 90 and 120. I really worry about burnout a lot. So,
yeah,
ugh.
Let me also add, and this is a little bit of personal stuff. I've shared this on the podcast before, that in the fall, I want to say September, we decided to add that one shot of long acting, not because of burnout, thankfully, or real, scary issues, but because we were, we're doing everything we were, quote, supposed to do and not getting the results that we all expected we would get. And I have been suspicious all along for the last 2 years that the insets can't handle the amount of insulin that my son is pumping through them, with the teenage basal rates, and he's a big dude anyway. So we decided to add a half of the basal from a long-acting shot, keep half of it from the insulin pump, and see what would happen. We have changed nothing else. We do have basal IQ, which keeps you from going low, but lows were not our issue.
Yeah.
It has been the most significant change in our care since hitting puberty. And I'd put it right behind when we got a Dexcom a little bit more than 5 years ago, which really opened up our eyes and changed some of our care. Not as much as many people because we went without it for 7 years, but it really was eye-opening. But adding this shot of long-acting has had better results than anything we have done. I'm talking pre-bolusing, which we do all the time, me texting him once a day, whatever you want to say. And while I love that because, wow, look at this. I mean, his A1C went down 0.5 point in 3 months. It's going to go down again. I can tell time and range is incredibly improved. He's changed nothing else. But you know what, Maura? It pisses me off because the pump, I've been thinking, it should be working better. The insets should be working better. He shouldn't have to take another shot along with the pump. He does enough, but it just goes to show a lot of this, my teen is high, our numbers aren't great. A lot of this isn't in their control.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we look back if I didn't suggest that to you, because that is like my number one suggestion for people with teens who are struggling with high numbers for a lot of reasons. And it was the same endocrinologist, Lawrence Adult Endo, that kind of gave us this idea. It's a safety net too. So we think the pump's on and everything's great, but a lot of things happen. What happened with Benny that you just described happens. Kids take their pumps off and forget to put them back on for a few hours at school, or they purposely take them off at school because they don't want to wear them, things that we don't know. If you put that one shot of long acting into a child's body every day, it's there. And I think that was a big part of helping Lauren too. And when that made her feel better, she remembered what it was like to feel good. So I can't even count the number of people I've said, call your endo or call your CDE and ask them about replacing the basal with long acting and see what they think. And then they tell me 6 months later, whoa, it turned things around. It stinks. You're right that you have to bring a shot back in. But when a kid feels better and does better in life, it makes it worth it. And we all know, even though the rest of the world thinks the shots are the biggest thing in this, the shots aren't the biggest thing in it.
It's really funny because as soon as you started talking about Lauren, I was like, oh, that's where I got the shot and the 2 checks a day from.
I figured.
The secret is out. I'm just going to read Maura's book and then give you excerpts from it.
No, we talk all the time. That's why we get together every month like this, and it's all good. And it makes me really happy. One of the things that I'm most proud of my daughter, beyond that she canceled her trip home to go to her endocrinologist appointment, I'm still like flabbergasted, is that she has allowed me to be open about many of the things.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but many of them. And I always check with her, by the way. But I think that her sharing our experiences helps a lot of people. And it helps her too, because in her worst moments, she can look and think, well, gosh, I helped these people out. So that's probably where that came from. But yeah, shot of long acting. Don't count that stuff out, friends.
I will also just jump in and say, and when we went to long acting, when Benny was very little, we used Lantus like most people did, although it was very new at the time, 12 years ago. So Lantus, Levemir, and Tresiba is the newer one, and we use Tresiba. So if you're going to talk to your endo about this, talk to them about the different kinds, because everyone is different. But for us, the Lantus really burned. And I feel like when I talk about Tresiba, I'm talking about whiskey, because it's really smooth. There's no burn. It's a really great long acting for us, and you don't need to do it at exactly the same time every day. It does take a little longer to see changes. Like if you change the dose, it might take 5 days to really see the change. But it does have a different kind of life in your body, so you don't need to do it exactly the same time like you do Lantus. And it's been a home run. We do half of his basal from the shot, half from the pump, which still allows us to use the basal IQ, suspensing for lows, and to use different basal rates. So that's been really good.
And you, again, I'm just saying it because we should. Your endocrinology team helped you figure this all out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I went, and it's funny because we went and talked about it probably 6 months before we started it, just to get their take on it. And Benny was not into it. And I'm the kind of diabetes parent where, and he's 14. I said, okay, if you're not into it, we're not going to do it. And then we talked about the advantages, the disadvantages. I offered an incentive for 1 month. I said, if you do this, we'll get that Nintendo Switch thing you wanted. Just try it for a month. And after a month, we did see such good results. And I said, okay, are you in? And he said, absolutely. But we were doing the shots at night. And he said, it's so bad because I'll forget. And I'm all cozy in bed, and then I have to get out of bed. So I'm going to do it in the morning. And I thought, like, who wants to do a shot like right in the morning before school? But he said me. And I said, okay, great. And
it's
that's how we do it
for
every morning.
Yeah. And that's a good example, too, of what I was saying before in that, work it out with them. But it's our job as parents to support them every way we possibly can until it's time for them to go out and support themselves, And so you talked to him about what he wanted. He said he'd rather do it in the morning, even though that's not your deal. You did it. So you get a prize.
And it's so funny because who am I to think that it even matters when I would like to give a shot? Right?
Well, it does. This is a family disease and it matters. But at the same time, like everything in life, the mother and the father have to take the brunt for it because we're the ones who chose to bring these children into our family, and we're the ones who have the responsibility to help them through. We have 80 billion more things to be responsible for with diabetes. But like I said, there's a light if you choose. So once your child goes off to college and beyond, it becomes a little less every year. And eventually you don't have to think about it all the time.
Oh, and speaking of college, so Leah, my daughter, who is 17 and a senior in high school, has committed to Tulane.
Oh, so good. I was wondering if she had committed yet.
Yes.
Yay!
So we are so excited.
Yays for everyone.
I know. I can't wait to eat my way through New Orleans.
It's such an exciting time, Stacey. So my husband went to college. He just went later in life. I got him to go and he took classes at night.
Cool.
And when we dropped our older daughter off at Fordham, I will never forget the look in his eyes, seeing his daughter go to this beautiful campus like Tulane is. Now, you and I had college experience, but for your kids, it's so awesome. I'm so excited for you. And it goes by in like 30 seconds. You're like, wait, what? Didn't I just pay $1 billion? Why is it over?
I know. Gosh, I can't. That's the part I'm worried about. It's like, I just want to take a deep breath and really enjoy it. And she doesn't like me to talk about her very much. She stays off social media, but I am allowed to share that news. So I'm very excited. Yeah. I do have to share one funny thing though. They said, when you go to college, the freshman 15, when we toured Tulane, said the food in New Orleans is so good, she's going to come home with the Tulane ton, which I thought was really funny. I thought that was great. It's like, okay.
That's great. Oh, I'm so excited for her. And then Benny, your kids are almost the same difference as mine. It was like Lauren was like an only child once Lee went off to college. It was kind of a nice time for us. Yeah.
I'm excited. I think it'll either be a very nice time or he's going to kill me because I will be in his face every day. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted right here on how it goes.
You'll have more time to put your oxygen mask on.
Oh, that really spoke to me. Gosh, my goodness. All right. Well, you continue to feel better. Tell Lauren we say hi and we are so proud of her for going to the endo, but more proud of her for being the excellent aunt she is.
That's right. We do have a event coming up, Lauren and I, but people will have to plan ahead for it. We are going to keynote at the largest diabetes conference in Ireland on
exciting.
October 19th. So everybody plan your trip, come out to Ireland. We'll all tour the Guinness factory, maybe before Lauren and I speak, or maybe it should be after we speak.
Oh, maybe after. But I'll tell you what, we have a lot of listeners in the UK and a lot of listeners in Ireland. So if you are hearing this and you're not familiar, I will link up the conference in the show notes. Make sure that you check it out because, this is a really great, as you say, it's the largest conference up there. I know you've been there before, right?
I have. It's a fabulous conference. Go, go, go. You will love it.
Are you really going to drive when you go over there?
I don't think so.
Wrong side of the road?
Yeah, no. I was trying to figure out if I could save money that way, but I think now that, going back to the start of our talk today, that might be a life and death situation. So I may want to avoid that.
All right, I'll talk to you soon, my friend. Thank you.
Good to see you.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
I love Moira. How lucky am I that she agreed to come on the show and do this? I hope you're enjoying it. We're still getting terrific questions. We will get to yours best we can. We're getting a ton of them through social media and in the Facebook group. And she will be back in May with another round. If you haven't checked the calendar lately, we are doing this the second week of every month. So the second week of every month is our Dear D-Mom segment. And Moira, I'm so appreciative that you're doing this. I know you're healing well and feeling better, but she's going through some serious health stuff. And really, I'm so grateful that she's spending the time with me to do this. And we have fun. You can hear we have fun, right? I mean, we could talk for hours and hours, and we have. Our community connection this week is about getting something yummy and helping JDRF. Community connection brought to you by Tandem Diabetes Care, makers of the t:slim X2 insulin pump. Now, this is the time of year we start thinking about graduation gifts. It's not too early. Mother's Day is coming up. And you know what? This is actually a really good one for Father's Day because Texas Roadhouse has named JDRF as the benefiting charity for online gift card sales for the entire second quarter. So what that means is that from now through the end of June, through June 30th, you can go to the website. I'll link it up at diabetes-connections.com, and you go to the gift card section. It's actually really easy to find because they've got the JDRF logo there, and they're going to give 10% of all the sales to JDRF. Now, if you have a Texas Roadhouse right around the corner, don't go there asking for gift cards for this. The campaign is only good for online gift cards. You cannot get it in the individual store location. Now, once you decide to purchase it, you can actually design and personalize the gift card, which is pretty cool stuff. Texas Roadhouse does this a lot. I think every quarter, actually, they do a community outreach like this. So it's really nice. It's an easy way to help raise money. It's great food. We've got one around here. It's yummy, it's convenient, and the gift cards, they couldn't make it easier. So check it out. Again, I will link it up in the show notes and at diabetes-connections.com. Quicker word about the show notes. I know I say this a lot. I am sorry for frequent listeners, but every podcast app has a slightly different version of show notes or podcast notes. Can be a little hard to find. Sometimes it says details, sometimes it says info, but I try to put in information and links for every show, including the time cues. So if you want to go back and listen to something, you know better where to find it in the show, or if you want to skip around, I guess you could do that too. But that's always at the website as well. I almost put the Texas Roadhouse story in our Tell Me Something Good segment, but I have so much good stuff. You guys are way overdid it this time around. So I have to keep everything where it needs to be to make the show less than 2 hours long. Tell Me Something Good is brought to you by Real Good Foods. Okay, so I talk a lot about how I try to cook several times a week. I really like the family dinner. It's when we can kind of get together. We can't always do it. My husband travels a lot, but it's important to me that we try to sit down several times a week. But you know, there are those nights where everybody's going in different directions, and that's one reason why I love Real Good Foods. Now, often it's Benny eating one of their pizzas, or Leah likes the poppers, but this time around it was me. There was nobody else home for dinner. I was not cooking just for me, so I had the beef enchiladas. They were great. I'd had the chicken enchiladas before, and I thought they were pretty good. The beef enchiladas were really even tastier, so I was very happy with that. Now, for me, it's got to be about taste. It's not just that the food is low carb and grain free. That is terrific as well, but it's got to taste great, and Real Good Foods does that. What's awesome about it is that you can get it in the grocery store or the Walmart freezer. Now, you can order online. You know, you want to like mix things up and try everything. But, you know, it can be hard to find this kind of stuff in the grocery store, and Real Good Foods is there. I just go to my Harris Teeter, and there they are in the freezer section. Real Good Foods makes it easy. Find out more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Real Good Foods logo. Just a couple of weeks ago, I brought you the story of Colt Scott. He has type 1, and he is competing this year in America Ninja Warrior. Well, come to find out, he's not the only one. with type 1 in this season. It looks like Christina Martin, who goes by Type 0 Ninja on Instagram, is also going to be competing. Now, they are on different regional tracks, so I don't know what that means. When we watch the show, will we see them together? But they've been posting pictures together on Instagram, which is awesome. Congratulations to Christina. I don't know her full story, but just from what she's posted, it sounds like she was in a car accident not too long ago. It sounds like she had higher A1Cs and trouble with management not too long ago, just a couple of years ago that she's been sharing. And it sounds like, man, has she come a long way. So we'll keep you posted on Christina Martin. Again, on Instagram, she is Type 0 Ninja. And it looks like American Ninja Warrior this year is going to have at least 2 that we know of in our community. I am so excited for Christina and for Colt. Thank you for doing such a great job to represent diabetes on a national stage. I also have some fantastic Tell Me Something Good stories from the Facebook group. Tim wrote in, my daughter was diagnosed type 1 at age 9. She is now 20 and just gave us a beautiful, healthy granddaughter. We are so proud and happy with her new little family. Congratulations, Tim, to you and to your entire family. That is just beautiful. Amanda says, my son started his own YouTube channel and he caught a 7-pounder on Sunday. Check it out on YouTube. This is Type 1 Fishing. The YouTube channel is called Type 1 Fishing. So Amanda, thank you for letting us know. We will go and check it out and subscribe, whether you fish or not. Those are always fun to watch. And Tara wrote in, and this one really got me. Since diagnosis on October 19th, 2018, my son and I have cried together every time he says he hates his new life and he wishes he didn't have diabetes. Yesterday, he looked at me and said, Mommy, I love my life and everyone in it. No mention of diabetes. It melted my heart. He is 8. Oh my gosh. Tara, what strength you have. This is just one of those things where you have to push through it, right? And show your child that diabetes is going to stink, but life is going to be okay. You're going to get through it. Your new life is going to be okay. And it sounds like you have done a terrific job in letting your son know that. So I hope that continues. Keep us posted on how he's doing. You know, it's very tough to grow up with this disease. It's tough to be a mom of a kid growing up with this disease. And I really appreciate you sharing that because it sounds like you all have done a lot of hard work to get him there. Man, I love this segment. Tell me something good. Give me your good stuff. I post about it in the Facebook group. You can always email me, Stacey at diabetes-connections.com as well. And as you hear, it can be something big like making it on network television, or it can be something, I'll say, quote, smaller, like the other stories that you heard. They're all incredibly significant in my opinion. And I'm just thrilled to be able to tell these stories. Tell me something good. Before I wrap things up this week, just wanted to talk a little bit about diabetes on our recent trip. I like to share some stuff about us and how it all went. So as I said, we flew out to San Francisco and then it was a full week. And we have not had a week together of just the 4 of us in a very long time. And we needed it. It's been a very stressful school year. And man, it was everything I hoped. I mean, it wasn't perfect. We weren't holding hands and singing Up With People, although I tried to get them to do that, but the kids have the headphones on or whatever, but we spent a lot of time together and we did all the things that you want to do. We played cards, we did sightseeing, we just had a great time. And the trip itself was unbelievable. I mean, San Francisco was beautiful. Then we went up the coast, as I said, to the Redwood Forest. We stayed in Oric, California, which is this teeny little town. We stayed in these teeny little cabins. It was like a mill area. I can't call it a town. There were 5 homes, quote unquote, 5 little homes, which were beautiful. I don't mean that they were run down or anything, but I'm calling them cabins and homes kind of interchangeably. I mean, they had Wi-Fi. They were homes, but they were small homes, right by a mill. When they used to do logging up there, this was a tiny community. So it was pretty cool to stay there because then you just walked across the street and you're in the Redwood Forest. It was a wild place to be. I mean, there's elk and it was beautiful. Then we kept going and went to Eugene, Oregon, and then we drove through Portland and went to Vancouver, Washington. My daughter has a friend there and wanted to see him and visit from camp. And then we continued to Seattle, where the Friends for Life conference was, and flew home from there. So diabetes actually played pretty nice considering how much travel time we had. And I mean like airplane time, car time. how much vacation type food we ate. We did cook for a couple of days when we were in that cabin, but for the most part, this was hotels in the car. It was not our typical home kind of eating. He did have one really bad low. That was in Vancouver. And it was one of those lows where he was loopy. He had gone down to about 60, but he stayed there. And we were texting back and forth. He and my daughter were in one room and my husband and I were in another. And we were texting about it. And I advised him, drink this juice. Don't drink too much, because we're used to get down to 65 and then basal IQ will kick in. But as I've said, and basal IQ, if you're not familiar, is the software for the T-Slim X2 insulin pump that works with the Dexcom G6 and will stop the insulin if you get too low or if you're trending low too quickly. And so we've had very few lows, but we're also using Tresiba. Benny takes one shot of long-acting a day for about 45% of his basal insulin right now. So it can mess with that software because it has no idea that we're using Tresiba, right? We can't tell the software that he has the shot insulin on board. So we've gotten pretty good at writing it out, but this one wouldn't come up. So he called me as we were texting. He called me and said, come to my room. So I did. And he told me later he couldn't see the screen very well to text, which is why he called me. And I don't remember the last time something like that has happened. So he sat at 60 for a while. And by a while, I mean 20 minutes. And we were really trying hard not to overtreat. And of course, he's starving, poor kid. And then all of a sudden, all the alarms start going off because he was 40. Now, I still think he was lying on the Dexcom and getting one of those compression lows that you can get when you lay right on the sensor. My understanding is that the circulation around the sensor stops and it reads it as very, very low blood sugar when in fact, if you just lift up the site and stop leaning on it, the circulation begins and it kicks in. So we did a finger stick. We did a couple of finger sticks to make sure things were where they're supposed to be. And at that time, he was about 62. But man, you know how, you as you listen or your kid with diabetes, you can have a low that the number looks low, but you feel okay. But sometimes you just have a low that doesn't seem very low. And I don't consider 60, 65 very, very low for Benny these days. But he just felt like garbage. So we waited it out. I wound up giving him a full juice. I want to say it was about 30 carbs of juice and about 20 carbs of gummies. And he was really starving. So, we had limited food. I mean, I could have run downstairs in the hotel, but I think I gave him a bag of nuts just to snack on because he was so hungry. And then probably about half an hour later, things started to go up. And I expected him to go way up, right? After all of that sugar, you'd think, gosh, he's going to be 200. He was steady, 110, 120 all night. So I don't know what that was about, but that was no fun. And in the morning, we had tons of conversations. We were looking at stupid stuff on Instagram, just to pass the time. My daughter had been talking to him. He didn't remember any of it, which also was scary. A little while later, things started to come back. And now he says he pretty much remembers everything that happened, but that was also new. So that low was kind of one of those scary ones that you hope doesn't repeat. The other thing that happened was that just as a matter of fact of filling the cartridge on the T-Slim, and Benny does most of this himself. I do it occasionally. And he asked me he ran in the shower. He's like, can you charge it? Can you fill it? Sure, no problem. And I'm putting if you're familiar, you use a needle attached to a hollow tube, syringe, and you pull the insulin out of the vial. And then you put that needle in the cartridge and shoop, you push all the insulin into the cartridge. So I just said swoop. I was doing the swoop part where you put the needle into the cartridge and push the insulin through and you're pressing down a plunger like a syringe. And the whole thing exploded. The needle came off the end of the cartridge. The insulin, went everywhere. I was so pissed. The insulin went all over the place. I dropped the cartridge. It was a disaster. Now, luckily, I wasn't holding the pump. I didn't drop that. We had lots of supplies. We had plenty of insulin with us. But, I smelled like insulin now because I got it all over myself. And I'm looking at probably, I think, 50 to 75 units, maybe 100 units of insulin on the counter. And we're so lucky. We have great insurance coverage. We don't pay a ton for insulin, but who wants to waste any of it? Oh, I was so mad. And the hard part was I wasn't sure how much actually got into the cartridge. So I put about 50 more units in it, whatever was left in the syringe. And then I told Benny, I'm not going to guess. We'll just refill it or we'll change the cartridge out when we need to. But, so that was frustrating. But other than that, this was probably one of our best trips with diabetes. And I think that's because we've learned a lot over the years. We're lucky enough to travel quite a bit. And of course, we got lucky. I mean, sometimes diabetes does decide to play pretty nice, except for that heinous low. But also, I think using the long-acting and having the basal IQ has made a really big difference. We're seeing our endocrinologist at the end of the month. And if Benny is comfortable, I'm not planning on sharing specific numbers, but I would like to have him maybe come on with me and talk a little bit about how things have changed. Because I'm telling you, time in range, as I mentioned with Moira, it has made such a big difference. We're back to like pre-puberty time in range, and I'm knocking wood because I don't want to talk too much about it and jinx it. But I do want to share how well this is working for us. And I think it's those cruddy insets. Those things just do not work well. And it makes me so mad. But I think once you start pushing more than 30, 40 units of basal insulin a day through them, they crap out easier. So I'm not a scientist. I don't have research. All I have is my own kid and anecdotal evidence. I'm going to talk to our endocrinologist about it a little bit more. And like I said, after we see him at the end of April, I'll bring you a report about our experiences. I should also mention Friends for Life, of course, was terrific. They always do a great job. We only got to stay for one day. It's a 2-day conference, but we had to get out of there on Sunday. So much fun to meet new people, see old friends. And I spoke to Bruce Buckingham, who is a renowned researcher and endocrinologist. I spoke to him about closed loop systems. We talked a lot about what's on the market now, some of the limitations with the Medtronic 670G, the first one to come to market. And you may have heard about a study that was done with them recently about some people who were unhappy with it, people who stopped using it. And he shared his thoughts on that and about what's coming next. And I will have that interview soon. It might be next week, but I think 2 weeks from now. But I'm home. I'm trying to sort through things. But man, it was incredible to talk to him. He's really just an incredible person who, here's his perspective. He put his first patient on a pump in 1979. That pump, he told me. I said, was it like a shoebox? He was like, not quite. He was showing me how big it was. It was a little smaller than a shoebox, maybe a kid's shoebox. So he's got an interesting and amazing perspective. Okay, thank you to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. And as always, thank you to you for listening. It is such an honor and a privilege to do this show every week. If you've enjoyed it, if you've listened this far, please tell a friend. I send an email every week with a newsletter with the episode and some other fun information. It's really easy to share that or just show them how to listen to the podcast on their phone. We'd love to hear more stories, and that means reaching more people. So thank you, as always, for your help. I'm Stacey Sims, and I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.